Hello, good evening. Welcome to State of Affairs. My name is Nana Abanamwa. Tonight, we continue to mourn the over 150 who lost their lives to floods and fire last year. Today, President Mahama tweeted to say that things are being done, developments are being embarked on to make sure that it never happens again. Well, we'll be discussing the first anniversary, the Remembrance Day, with Fifi Yawson, who's an engineer. Also, Professor Nana Isilfi Kondia will also be here with us. And then Dr. Zanetta Rawlings, who's the NDC parliamentary candidate for the Korle-Klottey constituency. So do stay with me. In the meantime, let's take a look at some stories our reporters have pieced together in remembrance of the day. As you already know, it is exactly a year after the June 3 flood and fire disaster that killed over 150 people and destroyed property worth millions of cedis. Tonight, in this story, we take a look or take you back into what happened that fateful day, how it affected people, how the solution was handled by the authorities in charge, and to find out if indeed there has been any positive change in the prevention and management of such disasters a year on. Here's a report by Alice Aid.
On 3rd June 2015, Ghana witnessed a catastrophe that will forever remain on the minds of people and generations to come. More than 150 lives and property worth millions of Ghana cedis were lost to fire and flood waters in Accra. Rains, which started at around 8 p.m. on that Black Wednesday, flooded the whole of the capital, particularly the Kwame Nkrumah Circle. Apart from the tens of employees of the Goil Fuel Station behind the Circle branch of the GCB Bank, where the fire was believed to have started, scores of other people that rushed to the fuel dump to seek refuge from the rains and resultant marauding floods all got burnt. Aside from those who burnt or suffocated to death at the Goil Fuel Station, residents of Odorna also suffered from the flood raids as rainwater gushed into their houses to kill, maim and destroy. So outside the filling station were also scores of lifeless bodies littering the streets or found in drains. This disaster did not only affect those living at the Nkrumah Circle, but people who ply their trade or businesses at the Nkrumah Circle and surrounding areas. When State of Affairs visited the area a year after, it was found that no new development had taken place since the disaster. We spoke to a few people and victims on what they recall on that fateful day.
The thing started around 8. When we were there, we wanted to go and watch some series, but when we were there when the water started. So when it started, the gutter started flooding. And we were like, you tell other person, Charlie, the water is coming, so hurry up, let's pack our things. And by the time we realized, the thing has come. So we couldn't even pick anything, just a pin. We couldn't even pick anything. We have to run to the top. So we were at the top when we started smelling the petrol. And we're like, like the cars in the house where the cars that, like, the petrol are out of the cars. So as we were there, we were just, but the scent got very hard. So other people were saying, I can sense petrol, I can hear petrol, I can do this, I can do that. So we were just praying. The only prayer that we were there, we were at the top there, and the only prayer that we were praying was that, hey God, let no one cause any calamity here, because the petrol was very hard to the extent that we couldn't even breathe. So, but we were here when we started hearing people shouting, fire, fire, fire. And all of a sudden, we saw the fire coming from this side. We saw the fire coming from this side, and like, we were like, oh God, let us stop at that side, let us stop at that side. By the time we realized the fire have entered the house, and it's a story building with flats. All the flats have gotten burnt inside, every dress. We didn't even pick one.
Although a fund was set up by government to compensate surviving victims and families of those that lost their lives, it seems not all of them got hold of their cash. There are still few people who complained they never got any support from anyone, decrying that life has been hell for them ever since June 3rd, 2015.
Nothing. And not that we've relaxed. Like, we are doing some follow-up. We've been going to NADMO headquarters. The directors from NADMO headquarters to Interior Minister, from Interior Minister to the Finance Minister. But we've not heard of anything. We've had nothing from the government. So we are still pleading, wherever the government is, you should listen to our voice and then help us, because we are facing a lot of challenges.
The only compensation we wanted from them was them helping us build our house. Because the house is a family house that my great-great-great-great-grandmother built it in. Since the thing happened, the family has departed. Everyone is gone to other places. We don't even see each other. That phone, you can't call. Because when the thing happened, everything of ours spoils. They come here to take pictures that they'll be bringing us items to, like, they'll be coming to help us rebuild the house, but none of them, no one stepped in.
A very serious challenge facing the country is the sighting of gas and other fuel stations in residential areas in spite of the high fatalities associated with gas use and anything inflammable. This issue came up immediately after the flood and fire disaster killed, injured people and destroyed millions of properties. This forced the Environmental Protection Agency (EPA), the National Petroleum Authority, the district assemblies and other agencies or institutions to start clamping down on the activities of fuel filling stations in residential areas, demolishing illegal structures purported to be on waterways, with the authorities of the Ghana National Fire Service inspecting fire precautionary measures and tools at various fuel pumps. However, just as it is a culture of Ghanaians to only discuss topical issues when the unusual happens and left to die without remedial measures being instituted, we found out that despite all the inspections and the closure of fuel stations last year, there are still a huge number of them operating at unapproved places. Some residents living at places where fuel stations have been built complained of the safety of their lives and called for an urgent response from the appropriate institutions.
I know that the filling station has not, let's say, it shouldn't have been a human, like living people. At least it has to be at far place. So we are praying that the government has to do something.
On 31st May, there was a rainfall, and then there was a blast over there. Even the people working there, they ran out from the place. We couldn't sleep that whole night. And during the night, you can't sleep because most of the cars will go in there making noise. Where they go, it makes a whole lot of noise. We can't sleep. So I think people should do something about it. It's not right for this thing to be among where people are living. We are always scared. When we are sleeping, we don't sleep freely because we'll be thinking there will be something going on since that blast that happened. So please do something about it. And it's giving us a whole lot of problem in our own house here. Most of the water flow, I don't know how they did their work over there, but most of the water don't flow like it used to flow before. When they came, they didn't tell us they were coming to do filling station. It was a bank that they promised they were coming to do in the area. And then they changed everything to a filling station.
The big question then is, until when will the laws of Ghana work properly? Or when are the authorities in charge ever going to implement them effectively? When in fact, fuel stations or fuel dumps that are not supposed to be sited in residential areas are still operating at places where a lot of people are living, putting several lives in danger. For State of Affairs, this is Alice Aiti.
Right, and we still stay on the day, and Ghana today marked one-year memorial service of the disaster that claimed more than 150 lives. President John Dramani Mahama, in a tweet commemorating the sad incident, said government will continue to correct developments that would not lead to another disaster.
The ceremony was under the theme, Never Again, June 3 disaster, focused on health and safety. Family and friends of the victims converged at the Nkrumah Circle for the first anniversary of the June 3 disaster, which shook the nation to its core and brought pain and tears to many.
We are people who care, and recognizing and noting that members of our families were affected, we put into plan and action to identify our dead brothers and sisters. And whenever their DNA associated them with their families, government's promise of the support was paid. At this time, let me report that 108 families have been taken care of.
The memorial service was followed by a wreath-laying ceremony at the Goil Fuel Station, the epicenter of the disaster. Member of Parliament for Klote Kwale, Niyama Ashite, spoke with State of Affairs after the ceremony.
The sort of drains that we have are drains that were built years back. And today, they cannot carry the volume of water that they used to. And therefore, there's a need to expand, to reconstruct the drains. Very, very important. So I'm sure if we put all together and also do some advocacy for our people to change their attitude, because attitudinally, we haven't done well. People are still littering the gutters and putting all manner of things in the drains. And then when the drains are choked and the water cannot run, the water will find its own level and go into people's homes.
But the parliamentary candidate of the New Patriotic Party for the Klote Kwale constituency, Philip Addison, believes enough has not been done after the June 3 disaster last year.
I think that there's a need to have a comprehensive look at this whole thing. You see, it's not a question, I hear people say all kinds of things. This needs expert review to see what it is that can be done to permanently solve the situation, the problem. You see what I mean? It is not a matter of we coming here every year commemorating. 1 year down the line, nothing much has been done.
He wants government to be more proactive in dredging all the choked drains in the constituency. The service was organized by the Accra Metropolitan Assembly at Abraka Local Council of Churches in collaboration with the National Petroleum Authority.
Now, some students of the Accra School of Hygiene have blamed the consistent poor sanitation and flooding problems on government's inability to employ them as sanitation and environmental health officers. According to them, most of their senior colleagues who completed school about 5 years ago are yet to be employed. They spoke to Joseph Armstrong Gold Alogbe.
It is exactly a year after a flood claims the lives of more than 150 lives in Accra. This has been attributed to poor sanitation and choked gutters. We are here at the School of Hygiene. We sought to find out from them. They, as sanitation officers, have they saved or failed this country?
I'm saying the June 3 disaster is a sad situation. One, it wouldn't have happened if we had good drainage system. If two, there were good educators like environmental health officers like myself, going out there educating the people, telling them the risk of throwing rubbish away each and every time. I think it would have solved that problem.
If the government had given us, let's say, an upper hand and sort of views on how to manage, let's say, disaster issues or let's say environmental issues, I don't think things like this would have occurred. So
because they have not been posting us and the environmental health within Accra Metropolitan, it's not up to the number that required for this municipality. That's why I think it's causing that problem. That disaster issues. So now we've heard that 4th July they've been posting us. So we are hoping for it so that all this disaster problem will reduce.
Because of the choke gutters, people must be educated about how they should send their refuse to the refuse dump so that it will not lead to the gutters for the choke to come. But actually they don't know anything about it, and they are not posting us. So like we can't go to them to go and educate them. So all these things is about what? Education. There is a saying that prevention is better than what? Cure.
Frankly speaking, I'm not happy when someone abroad says I'm coming to Ghana, because Ghana, as we are here now, we are rated the second most dirtiest country. Why? Because we, the environmental health students, who are supposed to make sure that the environment is kept clean, make sure that people, the awareness is created for people to know that dirtying the environment is one of the causes of this June 3rd flooding. We are not being employed to do that, so it's costing the country a lot. And if we have to even educate the people, I think most of the normal diseases we find in our hospitals, like the malaria and the cholera, we will not be having those cases for the government to be even importing medicine for those patients. At least we'll be able to prevent those diseases.
Okay, so we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll be talking about the 1-year commemoration of the June 3 disaster that claimed several lives across the country. Do stay with us. And tonight we're expecting you to contribute to the discussion using the hashtag State of Affairs across all social media platforms. I'll be too happy to read them out. Also, if you were affected, have you received any relief from government? Well, we've heard a lot. The NADMO boss says that 40 million cedis was spent last year on the victims and surviving families. Have you received yours as yet? Well, we'd like to know tonight. As I told you earlier, we're doing the discussion tonight with an engineer, Fifi Yorson. It's good to have you on the show, and also Dr. Zanetta Rawlings, Ajimai Rawlings, I left that one out. She's the NDC parliamentary candidate for the Korle Klottey constituency. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And also Professor Nana Isilbi Kondua, who is a political historian and chair of journalism at the African University College of Communications. It's good to have you in the studio as well. Good evening to all three of you.
Good evening.
Okay, I'll start with you, Dr. Rawlings, because it's the constituency you are hoping, to represent in Parliament. And last year, I remember I was with you days after the incident, and how depressed and frustrated you were at some point seeing, children especially, being, left to the mercy of the weather because there was nothing for them. A lot of them had lost their parents. You helped raise some monies for a lot of the victims across the country. A year on, would you say something significant has changed, has happened?
In some ways, I would say so, because at the beginning of the whole providing relief saga, what happened was it didn't seem like it was enough to just provide relief, because the environment was still in a pretty bad state, and it was clear that part of the problem was as a result of an attitude towards sanitation, towards what one must do in terms of one's contribution towards keeping the environment clean. And so it really evolved into a more participatory activity where the communities that had been affected were encouraged to come on board with cleanup campaigns and all of that. And going forward, I basically just teamed up with whoever was willing to do so at the time and at present to just provide the advocacy necessary, to provide the necessary logistics to to the communities that were involved and have been, as a result, engaged in a lot of cleanup campaigns since then. And also just harping on the fact that you can't constantly blame someone else. You have to own your part of the responsibility in terms of what you do in your little corner. So we had a situation where sometimes to understand why a problem is happening, looking at it from afar, you can be a little bit prejudiced in your judgment of why people do what they do. But if you come closer up to whatever the situation is and you actually inquire, you can find out that sometimes the reason people don't put the rubbish in the right place is because they don't have garbage disposal facilities. And so if you provide the facilities, then you help with that change in behavior, which is what we've seen a lot of in Odona Sahara, for example, which perhaps a lot of people would have thought, well, why bother? But it's been so significant, the change that we've seen, just going on and on about keeping the environment clean, don't litter, don't throw your rubbish in the gutters, and also providing the necessary help in terms of desilting a lot of the drains around the area. And that has been encouraging. There's still a lot of work to be done because I think Accra generally has a plumbing issue, to put it in very mild terms. But I'll leave that for Fifi to actually talk about in greater detail. But it's not just about the plumbing or the blocks in the drains or whatever. It's also a mindset. And if we can also effect that change where people understand the role they can play in shifting the way these things occur, then I think we have a winning.
But you have been interacting with the people a lot since last year. Does it look like they accept that responsibility, that they have a role to play, they need to stop certain attitudes? Is it something they admit?
More and more.
Okay.
More and more. And that's why I think it's encouraging that, we have that. Because the difficulty is when people are in denial of the role that they can play or their responsibility in a particular situation and how they can be part of a solution. And a lot of people understand that a lot of what they do affects the environment. And for me, that's absolutely essential, and that's encouraging. So a lot of people do accept that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'll come to you, Professor Nana Issoufou-Kondia. As a political historian, I'm sure, reading about the floods is nothing new to you. I remember when it happened last year, we saw some newspapers from 1986, Daily Graphic, and they were still reporting floods. And 1958, still floods in Accra. So you're used to these headlines, but never did you see anything that we experienced last year.
Well, you wouldn't say that never seen anything like it last year. I think 1938 in Accra was worse than that. Yes. And I was sad when the youngsters in the media would not go to history or ask anybody to tell them in terms of comparisons and date appropriately. I had occasion to correct it in a column that I wrote that some were talking about 1986 or something. Sorry, you're wrong, young man. You've got to learn. But be that as it may, it was 1938. Right. And the oldies who are alive in Accra will tell you it was 1938 that they had their worst flood situations, right up to where used to have UTC, SAT, SCOA, where they were selling the clothes for the women. I mean, it was not easy to record or to recall, I mean. Anyway, history being that as it is, the issue that you're raising would want me to address whether we have been able to learn any lessons. And what have we done? We haven't. We never did learn any lessons, nor have we done anything actually. If there had been anything at all done, it is this last year. I was sad again that I had one of the hopefuls in the constituency. I would have preferred that she's not here. I've heard one of her opponents saying that a year ago and nothing seems to have happened. You are aspiring, isn't it?
You're talking about the NPP
yes,
candidates.
You
right?
want to become. So is it a matter of it's a mindset that we want to be in government, we want to be in authority. Before we do things that we ought to do, for me, this is wrong. It's a wrong attitude. If it's a mindset, it's very bad. But the mindset I would have thought up to now would have concerned the idea that, and that kind of attitude. Gradually, it's being, wavered away, right? But for someone who wants to become a representative and comes along to say that, yes, 1 year, what have you done yourself, young man? That's the important question. And in this one, the media also fails. You put them there, they make statements you are not able to question. A sitting MP comes along to say that, oh, it's been there for years. What have you done, sir? Ever since that you've been in Parliament. These are the things that have got to question these
Dr. Rawlings, when you win, we're having this conversation about you as well.
That's fine.
Yes,
I tend to do what I have to do.
Fantastic.
Well, maybe it's a kind of a cue to her.
Absolutely.
Yes, I know. That it's time that we stop this kind of passing the buck, waiting that until it is mine, I won't do it. Right? I do know that the brave ones are cowed by that kind of talk. Right? And I think that we've got that big job to do in our country, using this last year's thing. I must say that I thank God that I missed it by providence, right? I won't tell the host. I missed it. I had sat in the office, it had rained, so I knew the routes that I could take. So I finally decided I was going to go through the circle. And somehow, when I came down and I got to the break point on the left between the assemblies, or whatever they call it, the car turned on its own. And it was just up to the closest to the next traffic light that I heard the bang. Okay. I want to express my condolences to the people who died and their families. But again, it brings me back to answering the second final part of the question, that Abamba Boyeng, that kind of paternal state, legislators must begin to wean themselves away from it and their constituencies. What happened, as a matter of fact, is partly the negligence of whoever are or is representing the constituency. Right? We say it is insulting. We say it is this and that. What? And the assembly people, assemblymen, what were you voted in for? This has been going on for years. So if you come to say change, for goodness sake, please change it. Don't wait until you get power. Don't wait. That's citizenship. But unfortunately, what is citizenship? We have in this country lost that because we've taken it off the education curriculum. In my day, we did what is called civics. Today, they've substituted what is called home economics. They can't boil an egg. They can't mend their ladder's, socks? You understand it? And unless there's a Joe who should wash them for them, nobody does. These are things we must go back to and make sure that we have done. But unfortunately, the education system is not helping, and our own people are also not helping.
There's actually citizenship education now.
Oh, thank God there is, but I don't know who
at the basic level.
Who is educating who, and
we'll leave that for another day, I guess.
Yes, I think so.
All right, I'll go to Fifi now. Fifi, last year and every other year when we've experienced floods and its attendant problems, people point to institutions like yours, the Institute of Architecture, the Institute of Engineers. Some say that technocrats like you are failing this country because you refuse to speak. You are overcharging, so people prefer to go to quack people in the next corner to build for them. True or false?
I would say it's a false statement.
But you've heard it?
Yes,
okay.
Numerous times. The institution, obviously, we have a role to play. One of the basic fundamentals of being an engineer is you have a duty to society. Regarding the issue about fees and all that, that's a total different subject matter altogether. But I do not believe that engineers overcharge. The society we live in, people refuse to pay for the right service for the right price. And they do so by turning to what you term the quack guys to make the designs for them and all that. What people should realize is paying the right fees for the right service, you are actually empowering the professional. Fortunately or unfortunately for us, our profession is to do with your knowledge and also certain softwares that you would need to run your analysis and all that. Now, if I am not being paid the right fee, how am I supposed to be able to afford a software that costs $50,000 to do a correct model that will give the true picture of a scenario? Can't afford it. So people tend to resort to just basic, old methods of calculating stuff just to get by and get paid for what people want to pay for. And it's not working out. So what coming from the institution angle, we'd want to encourage both the government, both private sector, individuals, whoever needs the service of professionals, is to do their best to empower them. That is what they need. They need to have the environment. They need to have the systems. They need to have everything they need to perform their duties appropriately. Without that, it's a no-go zone.
How often are you called, in to help with some of these? I mean, you see constructions coming up, like road constructions coming up. So sometimes, we all don't have that technical eye, but you can tell.
Yes.
A lay person can tell that this is not good enough. When it rains, there's going to be a problem. And you wonder if, professionals like you have even been consulted at all.
Okay, so there's two parts to our profession. There's the design phase and there's the supervision phase. You might have a developer who might cough up the money to pay for your design. Now, when it comes to the construction phase, he might resort to using his foreman or someone with a lower education to carry out the intended supervision. You can have a good design, poor construction or poor supervision will totally void that the general picture of the design. What we need is that developers, government agencies, whoever is embarking on any infrastructure work should consult the engineer, not only for the design, but hold on to him or her throughout the construction phase as well.
And that doesn't happen? Or rarely?
Rarely. I mean, it happens usually on, let me call it, high-profile projects, whereby you have, in most cases, international donors in who want to uphold certain standards. So they'll make it a point to make sure that there's an engineer inspecting the work all the way through. But when you come to the local guy who has some cash and wants to develop an area, yes, that's why you have a problem in them engaging the professionals all the way through design, all the way through construction phase. That doesn't happen too often.
Okay, I beg you, I don't buy that. This is what I have against all these institutions of professionals. You sit back, you're a Ghanaian. You've been trained, either abroad or here. You owe a duty to return something to your country, right? And so to tell me here in front of the country that you are expecting to be consulted, mountains will not go to Muhammad. Muhammad goes to the mountains. You're failing. So there is a validity in that statement that you are failing this country by virtue of your profession.
But I've heard the Institute of Engineers, for instance, speak a lot. Anytime there's such disaster, they speak, that they do recommendations, they make recommendations to
who?
Government. But they're hardly ever listened to.
Yes, we do that a lot. Proposals go out, and that's why I use the word, the institution needs to be empowered to carry out their duties.
No, please define empowered. I want to get a real good sense of it.
Okay, so
define it.
By empowerment, right, is one, give them the mandate to make certain calls. Give them the mandate to be able to go out and stop an operation. Give them the mandate or give them the resources to be able to afford and purchase the right instruments that they need to carry out effective, efficient designs.
What is the relationship between the state and, for example,
the institution?
Say that again.
The relationship between the state
and yours, for example?
Well, I mean, our institution more or less works under the Ministry of Works and Housing. That is our
So
sector.
what is the point in saying that you should be empowered? If you are working on the Ministry of Housing, whatever it is.
But Professor Sophie, I can understand where he's coming from. So, because, for instance, if you look at an institution like the CSIR, they've done so much research. It goes to whoever needs the research, and they keep it on the shelves. It gathers dust for a long time until there's a problem, and they will say, "Oh, the CSIR actually talked about this 5 years ago."
But you know the source of that. You know the source of that is because they folded their arms after reporting. And if you told the people of this country that this is what we've done, disaster is imminent, and we have done this and that, wouldn't that shake the people? Wouldn't that shake the authority?
Well, Dr. Ajiman,
to an extent, I mean,
okay.
to an extent, that would, right? But that's what I'm saying. Engineering is a profession, right?
Oh, so
we
is
advise.
every other person's
Absolutely,
profession.
absolutely.
Okay.
We advise, right? And like our institution is knowledge-based. We part on the knowledge that we've studied. We pass on from experiences that we've had in the field. Now, when it comes to the implementation phase, right, if the sector or the individual or the developer does not engage the engineer, it is almost impossible for me to walk to your site and say, stop the work, you're not constructing your drains right, or anything of that matter. What gives me the money
Because
to
you don't
be
have
on
the
your
power.
site?
You don't have the power.
What is giving me the right to walk to your site? You are an independent developer. I am a neighboring engineer. What gives me the money to walk to your site and stop your workers from constructing that improper drain?
You know
I cannot
the problem.
do it.
The
It has
problem,
to go back to the
young man. The problem is your terms of employment, which has this shortfall, which you have accepted with equanimity, and you are prepared all the time, all of you, to blame. I have done it. The people we advise are not taking it.
What more can they do?
Oh,
if they're not taking their recommendations,
firstly,
if they're
go
not being
back to your
consulted.
contract. Tell them because of this, it not being in the contract, we think that this is where our problem lies.
Okay.
Then we go back to her being the MP, right? Prospective, hopeful.
By next year.
But that we hold her down, right? This is your constituency. This is what's going on. Would you kindly then help us as an institution, right, to be empowered? I think it is within the purview of her, right, a mandate as an MP, represent the constituency, put it narrowly, parochially. You understand it? That, I mean, I am saying my case is that we have sat down too much. I have done it, it's up to them. I've done it, it's up to them. We wait for disaster. And here we've got a disaster. God knows that we will not. We pray that it won't happen ever again. But I'm pleading with you and your ilk, your kind, all of you, the institutions. This country must be very tired of, we did it, we advised them, they didn't take it. Go further.
Okay. Dr. Ajiman Rawlings, I mean, you've been going to the constituency ever since, you know, you won the primaries. What do the victims tell you?
Initially, there was a sense of hopelessness, you know, and just that feeling of not being able to change your circumstance. But you actually realize that given a little bit of hope and some support, people will actually surprise you. And I have been pleasantly surprised by the show of initiative and the willingness to learn just within the last, I don't know what, 6 months or so, 9 months. I mean, to be fair, a year on, I have seen the change in people who, from a distance, I first thought just were not making an effort.
Okay, what sort of change?
It's a sense of empowerment that you're feeling that people now realize that they can make a difference to their livelihoods, to their lives, to their environment. I'll give you an example because sometimes I just prefer to deal with real life examples. It's easier than trying to come up with something. 2 weeks before we had the first rains this year, I went on a tour in the constituency, but my main focus at the time was the Odona Sahara area because they were worst hit during the June floods last year. And, you know, the drains needed to be desilted. And the fact is that the silting up of these drains was not as a result of something that the people who lived there had done. Okay. You know, so with a few meetings and facilitating quite a bit, we ended up getting the drains excavated 10 days before the first rains came in. Now, the reason I'm telling this story is what happened after I managed to arrange that whole thing. On the day that the excavators came in, the people who lived there said they were going to come out and do a cleanup alongside. I didn't suggest it. A year ago, I asked people to do it. A year on...
That's you there?
Yeah, that's at the Odona market. Yeah. A year ago, I didn't have to ask anyone, and I didn't even have to be there. They came out and they did so well, just understanding that they need to own their bit of the responsibility. So, yes, I agree that we have a lot of problems, but I think that we also need to highlight the fact that people have learned something, and to just say nothing has changed and everything is still the same, in a way, it dampens the spirit of those who have actually made a change in their lives. You know, and that's the Odona market, and usually it gets completely submerged when it rains. This time around, the water level was not as high because of the excavation that had happened. Now, downstream from that, which was around the Sahara Park area, there was a lady whose compound house we walked into, and she was showing us the water level, which was below the window level. And for her, that was a big thing. I was looking at it and thinking, oh my goodness, we need to do more. But she was looking at it and saying, this is a big change, because the last time it rained, it was above the door. And this time it's below the window. And she went on to say, and we didn't get as much rubbish in our house because the people in the market are now throwing their rubbish in the bins that have been provided and are not dumping their rubbish in the drains. For me, that says to me that we're making a bit of an impact a bit at a time. It means that people are starting to connect the dots between their behavior and the consequences of what happens afterwards. They're starting to see that putting rubbish in a drain just because the water is flowing is not a way of getting rid of it. Out of sight is not out of mind in this case, because it creates a dam downstream, and then the water just flows back, and then that's when you have the flooding. And that's what we've seen a lot of. I've actually gone into the constituency when it's actually raining, and I've seen in real time the situation as it's unfolding, and it's frightening how quickly the water level rises. I'm sure Fifi is going to tell us all about the downstream management of all of this, so I'll leave him to do that, even though I have my own in terms of, you know, what's going on. But what's interesting as well is that the people there understand the link between what's happening downstream and what's happening to them where they are. You know, the explanations that people give, it's actually so perfectly apt, you know. And this is from a layman's point of view, where the man is saying, you know what, we're down here, the water is over there, there's like a hill there, the water can't climb up the hill, so it stays this way. There is a clear understanding of part of why things are the way they are. You know, and we also have to remember, with all the extra concrete around and so on, the water doesn't have that many places to go. And water is looking for a way to go. That's the bottom line. Yeah. You know, and if there's nowhere to go, everything that's in its way is going to get submerged, and that's what we keep seeing. But for me, the biggest thing has been seeing people feeling empowered. As you saw Issy over there, she'd managed to get some extra sand from a construction site, and she, with the people there, were actually using it to create a better surface in the market.
And it was not provided by anybody?
No, that's initiative. She'd found, and it's when people realize that if you ask someone to help you, the worst that can happen is they say no. But if you do ask and you're willing to make an effort, you can make a difference. And so many people are taking the initiative. And it's just from understanding that they can make a difference. And for me, that's a huge plus. Because when people have that energy, you can work with that. You can do more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Professor Sylvie, you want to comment on her submission, on the attitudes?
I'm very, very warmly touched and impressed. This issue about someone saying that there hasn't been any change is, for me, so frightfully cheaty, right? I mean, you know the truth. That's our problem. I know the truth. I'm not telling the truth. I'm telling it upside down because I want to make political dividends out of it. To stand out there in front of cameras and say that 1 year down the line there has not been any change.
Maybe he hasn't seen it. Well, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here.
Yes,
he's probably not seen it.
Let me concede that he's blind to it. That's all, and leave it at that. But certainly there's been a change. There's been change of attitudes. The people now know. The only proviso, which is a thing that detracts from the effort, is that we are yet to even or level the supply of these garbage bins to households, and then the cost to households. We understand it. There are, we should know, households which cannot afford it. And then the regularity of the contractor who removes this lot is also another matter. It's got to be a holistic thing. And we have made quite a lot of inroads into that. And I would expect the least, if you're not saying that there has been a change, at least I would expect the least that you keep quiet, rather than, get on the megaphone and say that there hasn't been any change. It's really discouraging, disheartening, and indeed I would like to say it's an insult to the intelligence of the people of this country.
Okay. Fifi.
Can I just quickly add to what Professor said? He talked about the provision of the bins and the collection, but with that comes the third bit, the enforcement. People must understand that there is a consequence to not making use of the facilities that have been provided.
Yeah.
It's just, I think, when he mentioned holistically, I thought that was important to add as well.
Okay. Fifi, I mean, when you, after the incident, if you listen to engineers, they all say that, yes, all the channels have been blocked because we've seen so much construction in Accra. We don't know what is happening to the town and country planning department. If anybody takes them seriously, I hear they are logistically constrained. They don't even have enough personnel to ensure that people plan properly when they're building. But as an engineer, of course, people will say all this development, we're seeing the high-rise buildings here and there. It's probably a curse on us. Is it something you buy into?
No, I wouldn't say it's a curse on us.
But we're not doing it well.
Yes, definitely there's clear evidence of some flaws in the whole system. I mean, granted, flooding, like as my honorable senior man here mentioned, it's nothing new. There's nothing new.
It happens. We've seen what is happening in Texas.
It happens. Yeah. It happens all around the world. I mean, no one can say they can have a perfect system that would take flooding globally out of the system. But it is up to the use of the knowledge from institutions like ours to mitigate the effect of it. That can be done. Okay. I mean, what we need to realize is flooding. What causes flooding, right? That's the primary question you need to ask. You have hydrologic issues. You have anthropogenic issues, whereby it's the attitude of people and how they go about dealing with construction, all that stuff. Right. What you mentioned about development. Now, what we need to realize is a lot of development, I think Dr. Zenota mentioned it, you're getting a lot of paved environment. Now, what does that mean? Paved environment means your surface is now impervious. The water cannot drain into the ground. It would now stay on the surface. That is where we have what we call runoffs coming in. Now, so if we had a system that we were applying some 30, 40, 50 odd years ago, where we had very limited paved surfaces, we need to relook as an institution or as professionals or as a country as a whole, we need to relook into certain parameters and remodify them, because now you're having a lot more fancy roads, paved environments where water cannot naturally seep into the ground. We need to change something about our design parameters to account for that. You're going to have...
I thought the designs are approved by some institutions, no?
Correct, it's approved, but when it comes to flooding, to water stuff, now every water course or every water body has what we call the catchment area. I could be sitting in one corner designing for an individual, right? But if I don't take into consideration what is going on within that catchment area, there might be some issues, right? And that is why I mentioned earlier on that engineers need to be funded properly so they can do the work well. Now, water levels itself, it takes a natural level. If you have a situation whereby you had a higher ground before, and now due to construction or whatnot, excavation happens and that level goes down. What happens? When it rains or there's a flood, water will naturally move to that lower level. If there was a lower level that was intended or left to be low, and due to construction or development, we go and backfill that area, right? We have totally changed the topography of that zone. Now water is going to redirect itself. So we need to look at it globally in that catchment area that affects the construction zone and say, okay, fine, because of X, Y, Z construction going on around, my design parameters would have to change to pick up all those things and make it a lot more effective. That is something that needs to be looked at.
Will these parameters include covering our drains?
You know, with the issue of covering drains, it's like, you know, do you put the cart before the horse or, you know, vice versa? When you have a discussion, you always have a split on equal sides. Covering drains is a good thing, right? But then the question people ask is, if you look at the attitude of people towards drains, a lot of people find the drains to be channels of getting rid of waste. Upstream, he puts it in the drain, it moves away from him, he does not care what's happening downstream. Now, if I have the covered drain downstream, now is it easier for me to unplug a covered drain than an open drain? Obviously, it's easier. If the drain is open, I can get in there with some shovels or some equipment and clean it out. So there's always that fine line.
But there must be a system of cleaning a covered drain.
There is, but it's a lot more difficult.
Okay.
It's not as easy, right? It certainly can. But if you, that's what I'm saying, if you cover it and all the junk is coming upstream into it, it will clog up.
Right.
You cannot have a system that will be flashing on a daily basis.
So hence open drains.
Hence, that is why we see a lot more open drains. In certain developed, more like, let me call them, like example, gated communities, whereby people are expected to have a certain level of thinking, you see the closed drains working perfectly, right? Now, if that is to be extended to the general population, whereby education is how do you call it?
Intensified.
Absolutely intensified. That effect would extend beyond the gates of a gated community, right? So it's
because it is a problem. I mean, people just have to look up into the sky. They see that the clouds are down, and then they're getting the rubbish ready because now there's an easy receptacle for it.
Right. there's a lot of parameters that change. Even vegetation, right? Vegetation, naturally, what we would do, it would slow down the speed of running water. It would give the water time to seep into the ground. It would take care of some of the silting, right? By slowing down the water, you will let the silt will settle down quickly. If all that is taken out, now the water just rushes down until it gets to a point where it dams itself. And then all the silts just keep on compounding in one location. And that's a typical example where we see in the Odo Channel, where we call it that it has reached its maturity level.
Right.
In what it means is basically it's silting out. You know, in any water channel, what we call the young days of a water channel is when it has its sloping right, it has less siltation in there, the water can flow perfectly. But where you have little blockages here and there, you know, silt will just keep on compounding. And it forms a, like Doctor said, water will not climb a hill. It would backflow itself to the low-lying areas, right? So then again, that's where infrastructure development comes in. If you change the topography of an area, if you lower it, and the water backflows, better believe it, it's coming right to your area.
Okay. Now, before I take the messages I've been receiving on social media, I just want to ask you one question, Dr. Agyemang Rawlings. Are you impressed with the work done so far on the dredging of the Odo and the Korle in your constituency? When I say in your constituency, it's a constituency you're hoping to before people take me on. But we all know she's going to win, right? That was just by the way.
I think that we could have done a lot more.
Okay.
And to be very honest, I was actually hoping we could have done more before the rains hit. But we are where we are, so it's really a case of, at this point now, you know, the machines there are working 24/7, I'm told, but that's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I
There's
hear
a lot.
decades of rubbish.
Yeah, you should see the piles of rubbish and sand or silt
why have
or
we
mud
done
or
this to
whatever next
ourselves?
to.
Why have we done this to ourselves?
Yeah.
Abenjuma.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point.
That's all.
So we can't be bothered.
Abenjuma.
I mean, I had the privilege of being there to witness some of the dredging.
Yeah,
and the stuff that was dug out is not stuff that was carried by water. I mean, if they're dredging it and you're seeing a bunch of broken blocks, it almost looks like someone came in at night and just tipped it in there.
Right.
I mean, we need to change our mindset and treat water bodies with the respect they deserve.
It comes first from changing that attitude about paternal state. It's gone. You understand it? And only last night I heard Abamba Boyen, chiefs get up and say Abamba Boyen, MPs say Abamba Boyen, ordinary people say Abamba Boyen, others in the opposition say Aban has not emboyed. And, you know, I wish that we can move away from this mentality. As Ghanaians, think about your country first. I always say that I have one passport. I could have had several in my, globe trotting, right? But no, I'm a Ghanaian. I want to remain a Ghanaian. You understand it? And my country first, right or wrong. But most of us are not doing that. And especially we who are said to be scholar literati, you mean the educated. We have failed this country for generations, and we continue to fail this country for generations. So what do? Let us first of all set the example by changing our mindsets. Right? A whole lot have been done. I like her modesty by saying that, yes, there's a lot to be done. Yes, indeed, there's a lot to be done, but you have done marvelously well. Accra would have been worse this year as the rain started, but for the bit of effort that had gone in. Even that, you could hear people sneering, cynics wanting political advantage. I dislike it. Look, it's your country, please, countrymen.
Okay, let me take some messages by kind courtesy of MTN everywhere you go. There's a message here from Brahma Asari and so who says, Nana, but did you just endorse Dr. Rawlings? Actually, I did. I did, actually. I endorsed her. So if you're in the constituency, you better vote for her. Yeah, anyway, how do you feel about that? Great. Anyway.
We're doing the job anyway.
They'll take me on? Oh, no, no one can take me on. Okay, Benjamin Yamo says, institutions should crack the whip and we need attitudinal change as a people. God help us. Red Devil says, feeling professor in the studio a lot. Okay. Mensa Bonsu Ankara, who's tweeting from Tamale, says, Nana, but God bless Zaneto for what she has done so far. A little effort has gone a long way to help the people. There's another one from him which says that, you see, a lot of politicians just go in and think that giving people money will change the attitudes that we are facing in this country. But it just took one word from her and everybody's following her. Well, kudos to you. Probably you're holding some magic wand somewhere. Okay. Okay, so this gentleman, Doom Mahama, says that I understand the perfect vision by the professor in the studio. Solomon Kundari says, Ghanaians just can't stand change. Who do we blame for this state of affairs? I blame all of us for this attitude. Denako says, I just enjoy the simplicity and humility of Dr. Zenato Rawlings in the studio. Nana, I think that engineers have not been treated fairly in this country, and Fifi has summed it. The government is not taking them seriously, and I agree with him. Okay, Kojo Akwa comes back to say that I understand Professor's point about the engineers, but what more can they do if they are not being listened to? Well, he says they should go to the...
Bantus will not go to Mohammed.
So Mohammed must go to the... Fifi, you must lead your ilk.
We'll take to the streets.
No, that has never solved solve any problem. Taking to the streets, I would have thought that some people in this country must have learned what happened short while back with all that bloody scenes. You understand it? That, and then if they don't, they want to go to history. The United Nations, shortly after the African euphoria and independence, we walked out at every resolution that was anti. And the majority sat in and passed it against us. And I think the African bloc learned very quickly. You understand it? So protesting does not win by going to the street and misbehaving yourself.
I was only joking, by the way. Just.
Okay, Detective Terry says, Dr. Zanetta Rawlings is my favorite woman in politics. I'm not resting until she gets a seat in the next parliament. You should rest. Actually, you should just get a bed and sleep. Nana, but what Zanetta lacks is her father's voice, but she's still got the charisma. Well, on that note, I think that Zanetta is actually dominating the messages here. We'll take a break. Hopefully you send me messages about the discussion we're having. We'll be right back. Okay, some more messages before we continue with our discussion. We've got about 15 minutes more, but the messages and the tweets and everything else I'm reading here is brought to you by MT and everywhere you go. Frederick in Kansas says, Nanaba, I live in Adabraka. What does Philip Addison mean by nothing has changed? Does he even come here? He should just keep quiet if he has nothing to say. All right, Crip says that I don't understand some of these politicians. They just don't see anything right with what a government in power does. Mensa Ahen says, indeed, nothing has changed in that constituency. I drive through every day and I don't see anything new. All right, so that is becoming topical as well. Let me get some more messages here. And another, the last time you interviewed the Accra mayor, he indicated that a lot of work has been done. 40 to 45% of dredging is not enough. Please ask Dr. Rawlings if she will agree. Well, she says a lot more can be done. I think she's already answered that question.
And the mayor in at today's ceremony also mentioned that a lot more needed to be done. I mean, if you mention the actual figure and it's under 50%, that's your way of admitting that a lot more needs to be done. So I think that he did not say that everything was okay.
Okay. Lawrence Logo says, mindset change takes a while. Drastic means have to be taken, and by drastic means I mean innovation. Friends Johnny says, I think that when it starts raining now, we are very confident that people will be safe in that constituency. The Sultan Abu says, I'm just enjoying the show. If only we had more straightforward people like Professor Esilfi Kondua and prudent ones like Zanetto in the system. Kole Clote Lagata on State of Affairs. Oh, Pascal. Nana, I'm glad you brought in an engineer because most of the time you media people don't even consult the engineers. You just sit down and think that you have the expertise to criticize engineers. Is that true?
No comments.
You leave that. Okay. What do you make of the comments, Professor Sophie?
Someone says, use the word drastic. I do not think, again, I'm going to go English, isn't it?
Yeah.
Drastic does not necessarily mean innovative, right? Drastic is reiterating the law or reading the Riot Act to you and say that I'm going to be more forceful about enforcement of this than I have hitherto been. Because if I've taken a laid-back attitude, I think that you have taken it for granted. So now I'm going to go drastic. Drastic means that I'm going to go to the letter of the word of that supposition or what is in it. So it is not a case of saying that nothing drastic has occurred. A lot has occurred. I mean, I feel too bad when I hear people who know or supposedly know, give you the impression that they know, to come along to say that nothing has changed. Adabraka alone, look at the roads. Haven't they been redone? Is that not a change? But they want skyscrapers. Skyscrapers like the ones that are built in the airport, and but you know, this whole thing, this disaster situation must wake us up not only to the drainages and all the rest of the construction, right? If you went to East Legon and the airport, you wonder, one of these days, touch wood, a plane misses it, and in coming down, hits those skyscrapers that are being constructed there. It takes you back to, is there the question that Fifi was not able to really answer? Because there's no answer insofar as he is aware of. Where is the town and country planning people? Is there also, I want to ask Oko, is there also any truth in the Metropolitan Authority that people go along from his own place there, that they say, oh, yama, anything. And they do. Is it true? Is he aware? What has he done? What's he going to do about them? Because some of these lots are built on drainages, right? And the fire service complained a lot in previous times. The complaints have not been answered. You understand it? And I think that that's why I said holistic. He alone cannot do it. Ezenato alone cannot do it. We all. But when we resort to this deliberate pull him down, that I've seen it is white and I go on to say it is black, I repeat, it's an insult to the intelligence of this country. And whether they are politicians or ordinary people, they are doing a great disservice to this country. Let us try to encourage those people who are doing something for us, because it behoves them. If you are not prepared to do it, pray to God for them.
Okay. Now, before I move to Zaneto and then Fifi, Zaneto, there's a message here from one Kletos Nimole, who says that, Nana, I want to use your platform to thank her for organizing a health screening program in this constituency. My mother benefited, and you have no idea how it helped us because we didn't have money to take her to the hospital. So you organized something of that sort?
Well, yeah, we've been doing health screenings every 3-4 months since last year. That's my version of CSR as a medical doctor, where we have a team of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and now as it took off, we have now an ultrasonographer, someone who does ultrasound scans. Okay. We have physiotherapists who come on board, and they all do this on a voluntary basis. And we see, on average, about 1,500 people per screening. And we go from...
Do it for a day?
From 9 till the sun sets, because once we have daylight out of the way, it's difficult to do anything, you know. So that's what we've been doing, and it's something that is meant to catch those who might be falling between the cracks, whether for financial reasons or mobility or whatever it is. You know, there's no perfect healthcare system anywhere, and this is a way of helping those who might not be able to access proper healthcare.
All right, congratulations to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you're asking why I said you should vote for her, well, that is probably your answer. Fifi, I mean, before we wrap up on the show, what would be your message to government? I mean, they're the ones who are always blamed, that you don't listen to our institutions. And I think that they don't really listen to the institutions, because I've done so many reports. When I was a reporter, I spoke to the Institute of Engineers, the Institute of Architecture, and they complain it's the same thing every year, that we are not consulted enough.
I mean, what I would have to say is the institution and us professionals are there to serve the community, and we would expect everyone to take full advantage of that. You can have perfect regulations, perfect systems, but if the enforcement component is lacking, you're not going to achieve anything. Now, we are in an era where you have a lot of private sectors. Now, if the government sector takes the steps to engage the private sectors to come in and help them enforce certain systems in society, I think we'll make a lot of progress. Okay. Enforcement, and like my learned professor mentioned, right, is the town and country has a role to play in terms of monitoring certain developments. Now, if it's by virtue of being, you know, understaffed or whatnot, the private sector can be engaged and given the mandate to take care of it. And it can be done in certain blocks, right? Give certain private sector certain blocks to go and enforce everything by the letter. If they don't do it, government can go back and hold that entity liable for allowing certain substandard construction works to happen in terms of drains. Drains are not just built, they are engineered, they are designed to perform a function. So I would say government should engage engineers, not only in the government sector, but in the private sector fully. Take them, make use of their full potential, and give them the mandate to enforce the regulation to the letter.
Don't charge cutthroat, fees as well.
No, I mean, for me, I take pride in my work that more than my fees.
Okay.
And I'm sure a lot of my learned friends will also do that. What is so beautiful than walking into a subdivision that you designed and you have heavy rains and there's no flooding? I mean, you feel a lot more proud about that development you designed than the fees you collected. We take a lot of pride in our work, and we want people to fully engage us, not after the fact when there's a problem, but before the fact. And what people should note is it's always a lot more expensive to take retrospective steps to correct a problem. Get it done right the first time. It's a lot more less expensive, and it's a lot more risky to go back and get certain works done. So do it right the first time.
Professor Sylvie Kundia.
There is quite a serious depth to it that we have ignored. The depth, I will break it into three. One, we are complaining that government will not take heed to what the experts say. And I've said, in passing that it's a case of mountains not going to Muhammad, Muhammad goes to the mountains. But beyond that, we have kind of compartmentalized everything that we do and whoever we are into them and us in this country. That if the engineering group that Fifi belongs has an image of belonging to Party X, then the minister in charge, down to the chief director and whoever, are interdict. You understand? Now, this has worked against us for very many years. Can we change it? We've got to change it. Number two, you said private sector. Private sector, state sector must work together hand in hand. Sometimes it is the private sector's fault to be shylocky about certain things. You understand? And if he speaks so glowingly, I hope that it's the same warm-heartedness of his people that they won't be Shylock with the state. Number three, getting our priorities right. The system is so saturated with politicization that we are never going to get our priorities right until we move away from that excess politicization of everything. Like Addison saying that there's such a... He must know. Philip must know. He shouldn't have allowed himself for people to come to say that he doesn't even step around the constituency, right? It's something against him electorally. You understand it? And Amar, is that his name?
Yes.
I mean, he shouldn't have said it's a long-standing thing. You've been there at least as far as I can remember since 92, isn't it? And what have you done, mister? You understand it? So, our attitude that if I'm MP, by the way, I must say that being voted into that house is the greatest honor any country will give to its own citizen. So if they will listen and bear this in mind, that it is so the burden coming out of that is so great that it's not there for yours in perpetuity. Of course, recently, when they did the primaries, we saw it, that people were told in several ways that, hey, it's not your property. You understand it?
You can't be a Mugabe.
No. Okay? So I think that the instant politicization into them and us, Circle last year must have woken us up very seriously to it. And touch wood, we pray to God that's not going to ever happen again. Thanks to the senator and company and all of us who Whether we were there with shovels or pickaxes, at least our hearts bled, and I escaped by providence.
We're thankful to the Lord.
And that's my submission for tonight.
Before I go to Zaneto to wrap up for us, Nana Osborne says, I'm enjoying the discussion on state of affairs tonight. George Bright Abu Jr. says, why Ghanaians pretend there has been no improvement in the country, all because it's not their party in power, is just very sad. Terry Eliminate says, I'm enjoying the show with my favorite Zaneto. Can you just tone down? Give me the issues. Talk about the issues for me. Okay, you see the way the Prof is pushing for patriotism. I just love him. We need an attitudinal change as soon as possible. And with access, interesting name you have there, says Nana, but I hope if Zaneto goes to Parliament, she will keep the same humility and commitment to work. The case is when. It's not if. When she goes to Parliament, you must be enjoying it. Yeah. You agree she's going, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. She's in.
Oh.
I put you on the spot there.
No, it's obvious.
Well, over to you now for your closing remarks. Since the disaster happened in the constituency, you're hoping to lead. We'll just give you the last word.
Thank you very much, Nanama and Prof. Fifi. It's been a great honor and a pleasure to interact on this. The discussion did get quite heated at some point. And, that's always refreshing, you know. Yeah. I would like to once again, on my behalf, on behalf of the NDC and on behalf of all members of our community, express our condolences to the families of those who perished in that awful disaster. And to say that we have an all-inclusive philosophy, and that's because the only way a community can progress and develop is by having an attitude where everyone is included in the development of that community. And so we're not, I mean, the bottom line is, when the flood occurred, when the explosion happened, it didn't say which party do you belong to before it killed someone. Absolutely. You understand? So the approach that we have is one where it's something that benefits everyone. And I would also like to use this opportunity to appeal to all opinion leaders, all political representatives in the various constituencies in Accra and in the rest of the country where you have flooding and any such disasters, to work together. Because the best way to actually achieve that change is to work in synergy. If we're doing it in Klotekole and we're getting the runoff with rubbish and the water coming from a different constituency where the awareness on what not to do has not been raised enough, then everything that we're doing there is a waste. So if we all work together, then we can all move together as one team. So that's really what I wanted to say. Thank you so very much for the...
Thank you. And you just had Dr. Zaneto Agyemang-Rawlings. She's running... Zaneto Agyemang-Rawlings. She's running on the ticket. I'm sure people get your name all the time. I've heard Zaneto. Anyway, she's running on the ticket of the NDC for the Klotekole constituency in the Greater Accra region. Also Fifi Yorson, an engineer, and also Professor Nana Issoufou-Kondua. He's a political historian and chair of journalism at the African University College of Communications. Thanks so much for your time this evening.